Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera. Anda sedang menyaksikan Niaga AWANI bersama saya Rozman. Dalam jam ini kami akan membawakan pelbagai rangkuman berita niaga ekonomi termasuk juga dengan pasaran semasa bersama ahli panel jemputan selama 1 jam 30 minit untuk anda fahami bagaimanakah lanskap ekonomi ketika ini daripada tempatan hinggalah ke antarabangsa. Dan sebelum itu saya akan mulakan dengan laporan ini terlebih dahulu di mana lawatan ringkas Perdana Menteri Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim ke Qatar telah berjaya menjana potensi ekspor barangan dan perkhidmatan bernilai kira-kira 700 juta ringgit. Menteri Pelaburan Perdagangan dan Industri Tengku Datuk Seri Zafrul Abdul Aziz berkata, komitmen ekspor itu diterima daripada pelbagai pemimpin utama industri Qatar semasa mesyuarat meja bulat perniagaan bersama Perdana Menteri. Beliau berkata komitmen ekspor berjumlah 700 juta ringgit sekaligus menunjukkan keyakinan syarikat Qatar terhadap produk dan perkhidmatan negara. Selain itu, beliau berkata Malaysia juga melihat potensi Asia Barat yang merupakan satu pasaran besar buat Malaysia yang wajar untuk diteroka. Tengku Zafrul berkata demikian kepada pemberita selepas majlis jamuan makan malam Perdana Menteri bersama diaspora Malaysia pada Isnin. Majlis makan malam itu yang dihoskan oleh Perdana Menteri dihadiri kira-kira 500 rakyat Malaysia.
Alhamdulillah kita mendapat komitmen untuk negara ini menerima ekspor kita, komitmen untuk menerima ekspor kita sejumlah 700 juta ringgit. Sektor FMCG, sektor perabot dan sebagainya lah, medical devices dan berbagai sektor yang lain. So, yang pentingnya ialah dalam perbincangan itu tersebut sektor-sektor dari segi pelaburan yang dibincang yang mereka nampaknya agak berminat untuk melabur ialah sektor tenaga dan keduanya ialah sektor digital juga. Dan pada masa yang sama kita juga berjumpa dengan beberapa syarikat Malaysia di sini yang adalah di antara pelabur yang besar di negara Qatar juga, terutama dalam bidang construction.
Baik, sekarang ini saya akan kongsikan antara indeks keyakinan pengguna Indonesia untuk kita lihat bagaimanakah sentimen ataupun keyakinan confidence setiap rakyat pengguna dan juga konsumer ini terhadap ekonomi dan realiti hidup mereka dan pelbagai lagi. Kalau boleh saya kongsikan iaitu dapatan daripada Bloomberg BPS SSI Research menunjukkan bagaimanakah perincian indeks keyakinan pengguna Indonesia daripada kalau kita teliti daripada April 2023 sehinggalah iaitu April 2024. Ini adalah menunjukkan iaitu mencerminkan keyakinan pengguna Indonesia kalau kita teliti daripada sini. Secara purata kalau keyakinan itu menunjukkan iaitu sebanyak 12 juta merekodkan sebanyak 124.8 dan ini adalah purata keyakinan pengguna Indonesia dan kalau kita teliti iaitu April 2024 telah mencatatkan keyakinan sebanyak 127.7 mata indeks keyakinan dalam kalangan pengguna Indonesia dan kita lihat ini ia mencapai antara paras tertinggi selepas yang dicatatkan pada tahun lepas pada bulan Mei 2023 yang telah mencapai sebanyak 128.3 namun ia telah menurun sehinggalah ia mencapai antara tahap yang terkini pada April 2024 tahun lepas pada 127.7 mata dan ini adalah prestasi kita dapat capai antara paras tertinggi selepas tempoh 11 bulan yang dicatatkan pada tahun lepas. Seterusnya untuk kita lihat bagaimanakah PMI pembuatan Indonesia daripada setahun yang lepas hinggalah April 2024. Kalau kita lihat secara keseluruhan purata PMI pembuatan Indonesia mencatatkan sebanyak 52.5 mata iaitu purata sebanyak 12 juta. Di sini kalau anda lihat sejak Oktober 2023 tahun lepas iaitu PMI pembuatan Indonesia terus mengalami peningkatan sehinggalah ia mencapai antara paras tertinggi pada Mac 2024 2 bulan lepas sebanyak 54.2 mata namun ia sedikit rendah tetapi melebihi kadar purata yang telah direkodkan tahap terkini pada 52.9 pada April tahun ini. Dan selain itu untuk kita lihat bagaimanakah pertumbuhan KDNK Indonesia iaitu prestasi dari tahun ke tahun hampir 10 tahun daripada 2014 hinggalah suku pertama 2024. Kalau anda teliti di sini negara Indonesia seperti negara-negara lain yang telah menghadapi COVID-19 telah mengalami penurunan daripada segi ekonomi dan persekitaran ekonomi mereka iaitu telah mencatatkan di bawah penurunan 2.00 mata pada tahun 2020. Dan masuk 2021 ini adalah kita masuk fasa pemulihan. Ia mula meningkat sedikit kembali kepada paras pandemik, iaitu 3.74 sehinggalah ia mencapai pada kadar purata, iaitu lebih daripada 5 mata sehinggalah kita mencapai tahap terkini. Walaupun 2024 masih belum habis, tetapi kalau kita lihat setakat suku tahun pertama 2024, kita sudah pun mencecah pada 5.11 mata. Hampir lebih tinggi berbanding purata yang telah direkodkan pada tahun 2023 mengenai 5.03% yang telah direkodkan pada 2023 mengenai bagaimanakah prestasi pertumbuhan ekonomi ataupun KDNK Indonesia yang dapat kita saksikan. Dan ini adalah serba sedikit daripada kajian indeks untuk kita teliti dan kita nak lihat bagaimanakah keyakinan Indonesia ni semakin melonjak, apakah maknanya kepada rakyat dan ekonomi mereka. Dan kita bersama dengan kita punya tetamu dalam talian adalah Dr. Fitra Faisal Hasiadi, merupakan ahli ekonomi kanan Samuel Securities Indonesia yang juga merupakan antara pakar ekonomi kanan untuk kajian meliputi indeks keyakinan pengguna Indonesia. Saya nak ucapkan terima kasih Dr. Fitra kerana sudi meluangkan masa bersama kami. Kalau kita lihat kepada realiti di Malaysia, sebenarnya banyak yang membincangkan ataupun mengupas tentang isu kos sara hidup, gaji dan upah dan pendapatan ekonomi, dan kita nak lihat bagaimanakah iaitu suasana ataupun situasi di Indonesia ketika ini. Dan kalau kita lihat iaitu indeks keyakinan pengguna telah mencapai antara paras tertinggi hampir sama dengan 11 bulan yang lepas yang telah direkodkan pada Mei 2023 yang lepas, dan dikatakan dalam kajian ini bahawa iaitu paras itu akan menurun selepas itu, dan paras yang tertinggi ini didorong oleh iaitu musim perayaan Lebaran, termasuk juga dengan pasca pilihan raya di Indonesia di sini. Dan kalau kita nak lihat berdasarkan trend-trend ini dan kita boleh lihat PMI pembuatan Indonesia, Dr. Fitra, bagaimana untuk Dr. kongsikan kepada kita apakah antara realiti di Indonesia ketika ini?
Jadi kalau kita lihat Consumer Confidence Index Indonesia ini sangat tergantung kepada momentum. Kalau kita lihat misalnya kondisi di bulan Januari, nah ini di bulan Januari kan juga cukup tinggi ya. Itu juga karena memang di periode-periode akhir tahun dan menjelang awal tahun itu ada periode pemilu atau pemilihan raya ya untuk presiden dan juga anggota parlemen, di mana spending dari partai politik dan juga spending dari pemerintah di bulan Januari itu memang cukup tinggi, sehingga itu mempengaruhi indeks keyakinan konsumen di bulan Januari. Tetapi kalau kita lihat momentum itu sempat anjlok di bulan Februari dan Maret, karena memang pada periode-periode itu harga-harga kebutuhan pokok itu meningkat. Salah satunya beras, yang mana ini merupakan staple food buat rata-rata orang Melayu. Nah, ketika itu melonjak dan melonjaknya harganya itu di atas 20-30% kenaikan harga rata-rata, karena memang masa tanam yang tertunda itu mempengaruhi indeks keyakinan konsumen di bulan Februari dan Maret yang harus anjlok di level 123. Dan dua sub brackets yang menjadi concern di bulan-bulan itu adalah kondisi ekonomi terkini dan juga job availability, yang mana pada saat itu memang kondisi harga-harga sedang naik dan terus mengerus ya income dari masyarakat Indonesia di bulan Februari dan Maret. Tetapi kemudian naik lagi di bulan April karena ada momentum berikutnya ya, jelang akhir Maret dan memasuki April itu di Indonesia diberikan semacam tunjangan hari raya. Nah, tunjangan hari raya ini adalah insentif semacam gaji plus yang membuat kemampuan spending dari masyarakat Indonesia itu meningkat, belum lagi dipengaruhi oleh euforia Lebaran, yang mana itu pada akhirnya juga turut membantu ya kenaikan dari Consumer Confidence Index di bulan April. Nah, tetapi kami melihat bahwa momentum ini ya sudah hilang gitu setelah naik cukup tinggi 127 di pengumuman terakhir, dan ini di atas rata-rata karena rata-rata satu tahun itu 124,8 ya. Ini kemungkinan akan tapering menjelang beberapa bulan berikutnya karena momentum tersebut sudah hilang gitu, dan kemudian akan kembali ternormalisasi ke level 123 atau 124. Nah, ini juga kemudian kita lihat fenomena yang sama dengan angka Purchasing Manager Index in Manufacturing yang juga levelnya ekspansif mengikuti ya kondisi momentum tersebut. plus juga kondisi pertumbuhan ekonomi di kuartal pertama 2024 yang 5,11%. 5,11% ini di atas konsensus market. Forecast kami itu untuk kuartal 1 5,07%. Artinya 5,11% ini berada di atas harapan kita untuk Q1 2024 ini. Artinya ini sangat bagus sekali ya karena ada momentum tersebut. Cuma memang sepanjang tahun ini kita akan melihat banyak sekali constraint, terutama constraint dari sisi moneter yang mana Bank Indonesia dalam hal ini the central bank terpaksa menaikkan rate-nya untuk menstabilkan rupiah. Nah, dalam periode-periode itu antara Januari sampai Maret kita juga masih melihat bahkan sampai April itu masih melihat tekanan terhadap rupiah, terutama adanya capital outflow dari macam permasalahan. Ada permasalahan dari sisi ketidakpercayaan investor terhadap kesehatan fiskal Indonesia. Yang kedua ada permasalahan dividend repatriation di bulan Mei yang juga kemudian menekan rupiah, dan kemarin juga ada tensi geopolitik yang mana itu semua memaksa Bank Indonesia untuk menaikkan rate-nya supaya rupiah menjadi lebih stabil. Nah, tetapi konsekuensinya adalah ya pasti akan ada tekanan terhadap ya kalau dari sisi consumer confidence index pasti akan ada tekanan yang mana itu akan tapering, dan berikutnya juga tentunya pertumbuhan ekonomi di tahun ini ya mungkin agak susah untuk mencapai pertumbuhan ekonomi 5% karena momentumnya hilang, tekanannya bertambah.
Seperti yang Dr. Fitra kongsikan bahawa selepas kalau kita lihat pada bulan April 2024, ia memang mencatatkan antara paras tertinggi disebabkan oleh faktor atau kesan daripada lebaran musim perayaan menunjukkan aktiviti persekitaran ekonomi yang lebih tinggi sedikit. Dan doktor juga ada mengatakan bahawa iaitu selepas ini kadar ataupun indeks keyakinan akan kembali kepada kadar normalisasi iaitu pada lebih kurang 123 ataupun 124. Walaupun kita telah melihat ini adalah antara prestasi indeks keyakinan, tetapi doktor kata selepas ini akan kekal stabil. Dan namun terdapat beberapa kekangan seperti dasar moneteri yang lebih ketat, iaitu tekanan kepada rupiah, termasuk juga dengan pelbagai lagi pengurusan kepada fiskal negara. Jadi kita nak lihat kepada iaitu pasca pilihan raya yang telah diadakan di Indonesia baru-baru ini dengan pelantikan iaitu Presiden Prabowo, pelantikan Presiden baru, adakah akan berlakunya rombakan ataupun reformasi ataupun penstrukturan daripada segi dasar dan polisi ekonomi. Seperti di Malaysia kita ada laksanakan iaitu dasar tidak popular ataupun unpopular seperti rasionalisasi subsidi. Dan adakah iaitu Presiden Prabowo dijangka akan melaksanakan antara langkah-langkah ataupun usaha tidak popular ini dan bagaimana ia memberi kesan ataupun mempengaruhi sentimen konsumer di Indonesia terutamanya selepas ini?
Ya, jadi saya melihat bahwa penentuan kabinet ke depan itu akan sangat krusial, terutama posisi di Menteri Keuangan. Nah, juga dalam kondisi itu kita melihat ada potensi perombakan, bukan hanya dari sisi personel, tetapi kita juga melihat ada posisi organisasi yang berubah. Ya, dalam hal ini Kementerian Keuangan itu akan di split. Ya, sebelumnya juga menangani tax ya dan juga bea cukai, tetapi tax nanti itu akan dipisahkan sebagai badan penerimaan negara sendiri, terpisah dari Kementerian Keuangan. Jadi Kementerian Keuangan akan berfungsi sebagai treasury. Itu sebenarnya suatu perombakan yang cukup signifikan yang akan kita hadapi ke depan. Yang kedua adalah apakah kemudian kabinet Pak Prabowo ini akan berselancar antara populisme atau rasionalisme. Saya melihat bahwa untuk di 100 hari pertama kemungkinan besar akan ada bulan madu, yang mana itu pada akhirnya akan ada keputusan-keputusan yang lebih cenderung ke populis. Tetapi setelah itu ya akan kembali ke normal, bahwa ya kondisi anggaran negara harus dibuat lebih berkesinambungan, lebih sustainable, dan oleh karenanya pasti akan ada rasionalisasi kebijakan yang mungkin tidak terlalu populis. Ya, salah satunya mungkin kalau dalam konteks subsidi energi, ya, ketika tekanan terhadap oil price itu memuncak, kemungkinan besar ya subsidinya itu tidak ditambah, yang menyebabkan oil price di dalam negeri mungkin akan naik. Nah, itu adalah hal-hal yang memang harus dipertimbangkan ke depan. Tetapi saya tidak melihat itu di masa-masa awal, setidaknya 3 bulan atau 100 hari pertama, karena itu adalah masa bulan madu biasanya, honeymoon period.
Baik, sekali lagi saya nak ucapkan terima kasih kepada tetamu kita kerana berkongsi bagaimanakah indeks keyakinan pengguna ni, bagaimana ia memberi kesan terhadap iaitu konsumer dan rakyat dan ekonomi bergerak ke hadapan, dan apakah antara kekangan-kekangan yang perlu kita kenal pasti seperti yang Dr. Fitra Faisal Hasyadi mengatakan tadi, iaitu antara dasar moneteri yang ketat, kenaikan potensi inflasi untuk meningkat pengurusan dasar fiskal, termasuk juga dengan tekanan rupiah ini dan antara faktor-faktor yang akan mendorong Indonesia untuk melakukan sesuatu tindakan yang lebih tegas dan segera. Sekali lagi saya nak ucapkan terima kasih kepada Dr. Fitra Faisal Hasyadi, merupakan ahli ekonomi kanan Samuel Sekuritas Indonesia, dan semua perbincangan ini akan kami rangkum dalam astroawani.com dan semua platform digital Astro Awani. Dan jangan ke mana-mana, please stay with us, kita akan sambung selepas ini.
Astro mempersembahkan UEFA Euro 2024 di Spo TV. Kesemua 51 perlawanan secara langsung dalam HD di 2 saluran khas. Wira akan bangkit, sejarah bakal tercipta. Stream kesemuanya di mana sahaja yang anda suka. Anda pasti tidak akan ketinggalan.
It all comes down to this.
Setiap gol, setiap sorotan, stream bila-bila masa. Inilah yang anda nantikan. 100% bersedia demi kejayaan.
Oh, let's fly! Germany, here we come.
Marilah menuju kegemilangan bersama kami.
Let them get their party started.
UEFA Euro 2024 secara langsung di Spo TV dengan Astro.
Seterusnya, peminjam Perbadanan Tabung Pendidikan Tinggi Nasional atau PTPTN digesa merebut peluang insentif diskaun bayaran balik pinjaman.
Fenomena Equinox menjadikan bumi dan matahari berada pada jarak paling dekat dalam sistem solar.
Malaysia berjaya membanteras jenayah berkaitan dadah bernilai RM990 juta sejak 2019.
Jangan meletakkan harapan tinggi berhubung soal mencari jawapan pesawat Malaysia Airlines MH370 yang hilang 10 tahun lepas.
Asia tumpuan utama dunia. Dengan ekonomi yang semakin rancak, pembangunan lestari dan tenaga boleh diperbaharui, apakah pula impak kecerdasan buatan AI dalam perkembangan teknologi dan masa depan pekerjaan? Kami mendalami setiap berita dan cerita. Saksikan diskusi, dialog dan laporan khas di Agenda Awani Asia bersama koresponden khas kami setiap Sabtu 9 malam di semua platform Astro Awani.
Bertemu kembali dan saya akan kongsikan antara dapatan kajian oleh iaitu Jabatan Perkhidmatan Malaysia DOSRIM yang telah berkongsikan statistik tenaga buruh untuk bulan Mac dan juga suku tahun pertama 2024, di mana pada bulan Mac telah mencatatkan iaitu penurunan yang berterusan pada 566.6 ribu, mencatatkan kadar pengangguran sebanyak 3.3%, dan Jabatan Perkhidmatan Malaysia DOSRIM juga telah mengeluarkan antara siaran terkini untuk kita lihat bagaimanakah kedudukan penawaran buruh ketika ini. Dan kalau boleh saya kongsikan beberapa perincian data ini untuk kita lihat kepada keseluruhan prestasi tenaga buruh dan pengangguran untuk suku tahun pertama 2024. Dan kalau boleh saya kongsikan secara terperinci untuk kita lihat bagaimanakah pengangguran dan kadar pengangguran daripada tempoh pasca pandemik suku setiap, untuk kita lihat daripada prestasi setiap suku daripada 2022 sehinggalah 2024. Daripada 2022 pada suku pertama kita sudah melihat iaitu graf ini, line ini menunjukkan penurunan, menyifatkan kadar pengangguran kita semakin menurun, dan kita dapat saksikan kadar penurunan ini terus mengalami tren yang berterusan sehinggalah ia mencapai pada tahap terkini iaitu suku pertama 2024 yang dapat kita lihat ia telah merekodkan sebanyak 3.3%. Pengangguran terus menurun kepada jumlah 561,000, dan ini adalah prestasi pengangguran yang dapat kita saksikan daripada suku ke suku daripada tahun 2022 sehinggalah tahun 2024. Seterusnya untuk kita lihat bagaimanakah tenaga buruh dan kadar kadar penyertaan tenaga buruh, berapa banyak iaitu jumlah pekerja majikan, dan kita lihat kaki tangan dalam sektor ataupun pasaran pekerjaan daripada tahun 2022, kita telah melihat iaitu daripada suku ke suku tenaga buruh, jumlah pekerja dalam pasaran semakin banyak, penyertaan mereka dalam pasaran pekerja mereka semakin banyak. Apabila anda melihat graf ini menunjukkan peningkatan, menunjukkan jumlah pekerja dalam pasaran pekerjaan semakin meningkat, bermakna ini mungkin demand semakin tinggi. Dan apabila anda lihat iaitu pada suku pertama 2024, kadar penyertaan telah direkodkan pada 70.2 iaitu sebanyak 16.96 juta. Dan ini adalah prestasi tenaga buruh dan kadar penyertaan yang dapat kita saksikan setakat suku pertama 2024. Dan dalam kalangan pekerja itu terbagi kepada 4 taraf pekerjaan, 4 jenis, iaitu kebanyakannya adalah daripada pekerja, iaitu pekerja telah merangkumi ataupun meliputi sebahagian besar pasaran kerja dengan mencatatkan sebanyak 75.0%. Mereka adalah kategori employee ataupun pekerja yang mempunyai majikan sendiri. Mereka adalah antara jumlah pekerja yang paling ramai yang dapat kita saksikan dengan jumlah sebanyak 75%, diikuti juga dengan bekerja sendiri iaitu 18.4%. Dan ini adalah dua kategori pekerja dan bekerja sendiri yang terdapat dalam pasaran kerja ketika ini. Yang lain-lain kita dapat lihat taraf pekerjaan diikuti juga dengan majikan 3.6% dan pekerja keluarga tanpa gaji telah mencatatkan sebanyak 3.0%. Dan ini adalah penduduk bekerja mengikut taraf pekerjaan yang dapat kita saksikan pada suku pertama tahun ini. Pada masa sama untuk kita lihat bagaimanakah penduduk bekerja mengikut jantina, sudah tentu graf ini kalau warna biru di bawah anda ini sebenarnya mewakili kaum lelaki dan warna pink ini adalah wanita. Dan kedua-dua ini adalah jumlah pekerja. Tetapi kalau anda lihat terbahaginya garis ini menunjukkan berapakah daripada jumlah keseluruhan, ini adalah wanita dan ini adalah lelaki. Dan kita lihat kadar penyertaan lelaki dan perempuan terus mengalami pertumbuhan yang trend meningkat. Dan kalau kita saksikan ini adalah penduduk bekerja, kita dapat saksikan jumlah lelaki dan wanita antara yang paling tinggi. Sebanyak 10.06 juta telah direkodkan telah dipenuhi oleh kumpulan lelaki dan 6.34 juta ini adalah angka yang dipenuhi oleh kumpulan wanita dalam sektor pekerjaan ketika ini. Dan kalau anda lihat bagaimanakah luar tenaga buruh, pada suku pertama telah mencatatkan peningkatan daripada suku keempat tahun lepas, penurunan sebanyak 0.1% daripada 7.20 juta kepada 7.19 juta yang telah dicatatkan setakat suku pertama 2024. Dan ini adalah serba sikit untuk kita lihat bagaimanakah prestasi, dan ini adalah kadar penyertaan tenaga buruh dan kadar pengangguran di setiap negeri yang dapat kita saksikan. Dan yang paling tinggi kadar penyertaan tenaga buruh yang dapat kita saksikan adalah daripada wilayah Persekutuan Putrajaya dengan mencatatkan sebanyak 72.9%, diikuti juga dengan wilayah Persekutuan Kuala Lumpur sebanyak 74.1% kadar pengangguran, kadar penyertaan tenaga buruh. Dan ini adalah serba sedikit untuk kita lihat bagaimanakah siaran yang telah dikeluarkan oleh DOSA mengenai statistik tenaga buruh untuk bulan Mac dan suku pertama tahun 2024. Dan saya nak mempersilakan tetamu kita yang sudah bersedia dalam talian untuk mengulas lebih mendalam untuk kita fahami bagaimanakah data ini. Kita mempersilakan Profesor Emeritus Dato' Dr. Zakaria Abdul Rashid merupakan penganalisis ekonomi. Saya nak ucapkan terima kasih Prof kerana sudi meluangkan masa bersama kami. Daripada data yang telah saya bentangkan tadi, mungkin Prof boleh kongsikan reaksi segera Prof dan bagaimana untuk kita membandingkan setiap prestasi ini daripada bulan ke bulan sehinggalah suku ke suku. Silakan Prof.
Ya, baik. Terima kasih banyak Nina dan juga Astro. Perkara yang menjadi perhatian kita apabila kita membincangkan tentang prestasi ekonomi ialah melihat tentang tenaga kerja, pekerjaan dan pengangguran. Dan kerana akhir sekali setiap aktiviti ekonomi yang kita lakukan, kita ingin mengetahui sama ada ia memberi manfaat kepada rakyat Malaysia atau kepada mereka yang tinggal di Malaysia. Kenapa saya cakap tadi tentang mereka yang tinggal di Malaysia ni? Kerana mungkin data yang tidak ditunjukkan tadi, iaitu mereka yang tinggal di Malaysia ini bukan sahaja rakyat Malaysia, tapi ada juga bukan rakyat Malaysia ataupun rakyat asing. Maka tenaga kerja di sini yang tidak ditunjukkan oleh data tadi juga termasuk pekerja tempatan dan juga pekerja asing. Dan soal pekerja asing ini dan pekerja tempatan ini adalah soal yang amat besar dalam pasaran buruh kita. Baik, menyentuh tentang data yang Nina sebutkan tadi, ini mencerminkan kepada kita bahawa pertumbuhan tenaga kerja, mereka yang bekerja menunjukkan satu trend yang sihat. Dan ini mencerminkan kepada perkembangan ataupun pertumbuhan ekonomi yang mapan buat setakat ini, walaupun kita menghadapi cabaran dalam ekonomi global, namun pertumbuhan ekonomi kita dapat tumbuh dengan baik, maka ia dapat memberikan peluang-peluang pekerjaan. Kalau kita lihat pada data tadi, terutamanya selepas COVID, kita telah menikmati kadar pengangguran yang sekarang ini pada suku pertama 2024 sebanyak 3.3%. Tapi kalau kita lihat sebelum COVID dulu, kita telah mencapai kepada kadar pengangguran yang melebihi pada 4%. Biasanya kadar 4% ini dianggap sebagai kadar guna tenaga penuh. Kalau kadar pengangguran 4% adalah, dan ke bawah ada menunjukkan bahawa kita sedang menikmati guna tenaga penuh. Jadi bermakna di Malaysia ni kita sedang menikmati keadaan guna tenaga penuh kerana kadar pengangguran kita hanya 3.3%. Bermakna kegiatan ekonomi yang setakat ini, yang baik ini, telah dapat mencipta pekerjaan yang baik sehinggakan kadar pengangguran yang melebihi daripada 4% semasa COVID dulu telah turun kepada 3.3%. Walau bagaimanapun, kita lihat pada bilangan pengangguran, kita sekarang ni, apa yang Nina sebutkan tadi, lebih kurang dalam 561,000. Dan bilangan ini sebenarnya adalah bilangan yang saya nampak kekal daripada sebelum COVID, dan dia naik sampai waktu COVID dulu, naik sampai, kalau tak silap saya, sampai dekat 800,000. Dan kita waktu itu sangat cemas. Pengangguran mungkin kita katakan boleh sampai 1 juta. Tapi Alhamdulillah perkara itu tidak berlaku. Tapi sekarang ini kita telah kembali balik pada 561,000 yang apa yang Nina sebut tadi pada suku pertama 2024. Tetapi kadar penganggurannya berkurangan. Ini kerana tenaga buruh. Bilangan tenaga buruh kita sebelum COVID, saya rasa dia lebih kurang dalam 15 juta. Sekarang ni dah dekat 17 juta. 16 juta dekat 17 juta begitu yang disebutkan tadi. Jadi bermakna kadar pengangguran berkurangan, rendah pada 3.3%, tapi bilangan buruhnya meningkat. Ya. Tetapi perkara yang menjadi persoalan kepada kita yang di sini ialah tentang bukan sahaja bilangan buruh yang dapat memasuki pasaran, bilangan pekerja yang dapat memasuki pasaran kerana perkembangan ekonomi yang sihat, tetapi apa yang kita bimbangkan di sini ialah, menjadi kebimbangan kita ialah trend jangka panjangnya. Kerana dalam jangka pendek, peningkatan dan penurunan bilangan pekerja ini bergantung kepada kegiatan ekonomi. Namun kita melihat kepada apa yang dipanggil sebagai underemployment. Underemployment ini pun berlaku agak serius juga, terutamanya underemployment yang berkaitan dengan kemahiran. Underemployment yang berkaitan dengan jam bekerja nampak telah kembali pulih setelah COVID, tapi underemployment yang berkaitan dengan kemahiran nampaknya kekal. Dan ini adalah dua masalah yang berbeza. Satu, masalah underemployment yang disebabkan oleh bilangan jam bekerja yang berkurangan, yang ini dah dapat kita asasi kerana ekonomi semakin rancak. Jadi bila underemployment dari segi itu tidak merisaukan kita, tetapi underemployment yang disebabkan oleh kemahiran. Bermakna kita mencipta pekerjaan, tetapi pekerjaan yang kita cipta itu masih lagi nampaknya pekerjaan yang tidak dapat menyerap pekerja-pekerja mahir. Begitu Nina.
Dan kalau kita nak lihat juga seperti yang Prof kongsikan bahawa iaitu underemployment ini adalah antara isu sebenar ataupun antara isu utama ketika ini kerana underemployment berkaitan dengan tidak iaitu sejajar ataupun selari dengan kemahiran menyebabkan iaitu underemployment, kadar underemployment itu semakin meningkat. Dan kalau kita lihat kadar pengangguran terus menurun dan kadar penyertaan tenaga buruh seperti di graf ini terus meningkat dan menunjukkan bahawa penawaran dan kita boleh cakap permintaan semakin meningkat dalam pasaran pekerjaan. Tapi kalau kita nak ambil kira juga Prof dengan iaitu ekonomi baharu, bidang sektor baharu ketika ini mengambil kira perubahan lanskap pekerjaan yang berubah dengan pantas dan cepat, kita tak nak sahaja menekankan kepada jumlah ataupun peningkatan peluang pekerjaan di pasaran, tetapi bagaimana untuk kita lihat kepada kualiti, kemahiran, upskilling, reskilling dan gaji bermaruah. Adakah pekerjaan ketika ini cukup berkualiti? Adakah gaji bermaruah mampu dicapai? Bagaimana pandangan Datuk?
Ya, itulah saya katakan tadi, semua perkara yang tadi itu dia berkait antara satu sama lain. Kalau kita lihat kepada kadar pengangguran, dia tidak membezakan antara pekerja itu pekerja mahir atau pekerja tidak mahir. Asalkan dia mendapat pekerjaan, dia boleh menurunkan kadar pengangguran. Jadi mana seperti katakan tadi, kalau katakan ekonomi kita, memang ekonomi kita rancak berkembang, jadi kadar pengangguran itu turun. Tetapi masalah struktur yang kita ada sini ialah guna tenaga yang dicipta sekarang ini adalah guna tenaga yang masih lagi tertumpu kepada kemahiran-kemahiran yang rendah. Jadi bermakna kita mengeluarkan, di universiti kita mengeluarkan graduate yang berkemahiran, yang mempunyai tahap pendidikan yang baik, yang tinggi, yang mempunyai kemahiran yang tinggi. Juga pusat-pusat latihan kemahiran kita, TVET kita pun dapat menciptanya. Tetapi labour market tadi, pasaran buruh tadi tidak dapat menyerap buruh-buruh ini yang berkemahiran tinggi ini, sehingga kan mereka terpaksa menerima pekerjaan yang menggunakan kemahiran yang rendah. Jadi ini yang dipanggil sebagai underemployment dari segi kemahiran, bukan underemployment dari segi jam bekerja, dari segi berkemahiran. Dan ini sangat penting dalam jangka panjang kerana kita nak menuju kepada sebuah negara maju, sebuah negara berdapatan tinggi. Maka mereka ini mesti diberikan kemahiran yang tinggi, barulah mereka boleh dapat gaji yang bermaruah atau gaji yang tinggi. Kalau tidak, struktur seperti ini kekal, maka kita berjari masalah pada kita. Ya.
Baik, walaupun kadar pengangguran sudah menurun, kadar penyertaan tenaga buruh, banyak lagi perkara yang perlu kita teliti seperti yang Datuk kongsikan tadi bahawa underemployment yang tidak sejajar dengan kemahiran ini perlu diteliti dengan baik, dan untuk kita lihat bagaimanakah penstrukturan daripada segi struktur ataupun reformasi dalam lanskap pasaran kerja ketika ini agar kita dapat menambah baik dan iaitu mendorong impak positif untuk jangka masa panjang. Sekali lagi saya nak ucapkan terima kasih kepada tetamu kita iaitu Profesor Emeritus Datuk Dr. Zakaria Abdul Rashid merupakan penganalisis ekonomi, dan sudah tentu setiap perbincangan ini akan kami rangkumkan dalam astro.awani.com. Pos Malaysia berhad melalui perkhidmatan kuriernya Pos Laju dengan kerjasama Lembaga Tabung Haji TH meneruskan kesinambungan perkhidmatan bagasi haji khusus buat jemaah haji Malaysia pada tahun ini. Perkhidmatan ini iaitu menyantuni lebih 11 juta alamat, menawarkan ketenangan fikiran kepada semua jemaah haji bahawa barang-barang mereka akan selamat dihantar walau di mana sahaja mereka berada. Perincahan lanjut bersama rakan setugas Nabilah.
Baik, terima kasih rakan setugas di Pusat Penyiaran Asia. Saya kini berada di Pejabat Pos Besar Kuala Lumpur dan seiring dengan ketibaan musim haji 2024, Pos Laju bersedia untuk memelihara kesucian dan juga kepentingan ibadah jemaah untuk jemaah Malaysia, dan juga Pos Malaysia Berhad melalui perkhidmatan kurirnya Pos Laju dengan kerjasama Lembaga Tabung Haji TH bersedia dan berbangga untuk meneruskan kesinambungan perkhidmatan bagasi haji khusus untuk jemaah Malaysia yang menunaikan ibadah haji di Kota Suci Mekah dan Madinah untuk tahun ini. Jadi untuk kita dapatkan perincian lanjut, saya bersama dengan Encik Zaini Yahman, Pengarah Operasi Pos Malaysia Berhad. Baik, mungkin pertama sekali Encik Zaini boleh kongsikan lebih lanjut mengenai perkhidmatan bagasi haji ini dan bagaimana untuk jemaah haji mendapatkan perkhidmatan ini.
Baik. Pada tahun ini seperti mana tahun-tahun lepas, ya, kita telah bermula sejak tahun 1998 lagi. Kami Pos Malaysia bekerjasama dengan Lembaga Tabung Haji Malaysia. Kita menawarkan perkhidmatan bagasi haji yang kita kenali sebagai bagasi haji, dan pada tahun ini kita telah pun menghantar lebih seramai 30 petugas yang terdiri daripada posmen-posmen kita untuk bertugas di Kota Suci Madinah dan Kota Suci Mekah untuk menawarkan perkhidmatan. Jadi kita akan memberi perkhidmatan di sana, dan petugas-petugas kita telah pun bersedia berada sekarang ini di hotel di tempat penginapan di Madinah, dan kita akan berada lagi 6 hotel di Mekah nanti, insyaAllah.
Dan bagaimana pula dengan kadar pembayaran untuk setiap berat bagasi itu, dan mungkin boleh kongsi juga apakah jumlah bagasi dan barang peribadi yang dijangka untuk dihantar tahun ini? Baik.
Secara puratanya setiap tahun, Pos Malaysia mengendalikan lebih kurang 230 tan bagasi haji daripada Tanah Suci Mekah ke Malaysia. Dan pada tahun ini kita menganggarkan sebanyak 250 tan bagasi haji akan dikirim oleh jemaah haji kita di sana. Dan kadar yang ditetapkan pada tahun ini dalam mata wang Saudi Rial adalah RM18 sekilo untuk penghantaran ke Semenanjung Malaysia, dan 23 Saudi Rial untuk penghantaran ke Sabah dan Sarawak. Dan selain daripada itu, untuk memudahkan jemaah haji kita di sana, kita juga menyediakan kotak-kotak untuk penghantaran. Ada 3 saiz S, M dan L. Dan ini akan memudahkan jemaah haji apabila mereka dah membeli barang untuk mengirim cenderamata kepada ahli keluarga mereka di sini. Jangan susah-susah cari kotak dan sebagainya. Datang saja ke kaunter Pos Malaysia kita yang berada di hotel-hotel yang telah ditetapkan ini, dan boleh mendapatkan kotak-kotak ni. Dan cuma urusan yang transaksi yang dibuat di sana nanti, ia juga subjek kepada cukai ataupun VAT tempatan. Baik.
Itu berkenaan kalau Cik Zaini cakap tentang barang cenderahati, baju, pakaian dan sebagainya. Tapi bila mungkin ada jemaah yang nak kirimkan Al-Quran, mungkin apakah prosesnya?
Baik, setiap tahun sebenarnya ramai jemaah haji mengirimkan naskah Al-Quran yang mereka dapat atau mereka beli di Tanah Suci untuk dikirimkan ke Malaysia. Dan kerana apa? Kerana sebenarnya Al-Quran ini mempunyai sentimental value pada mereka, dan Al-Quran ini lebih besar, dan apabila mereka buat ziarah, mereka nak rakam kenangan mereka di sana. Jangan bimbang, hanya datang ke kaunter kita di sana, sebab setiap tahun sebenarnya kita telah pun mengendalikan banyak naskah-naskah Al-Quran yang dikirimkan. Jadi bawa Al-Quran tu, jumpa petugas-petugas kita, nanti petugas-petugas kita akan membantu untuk wrap bungkusan ni, dan kita akan kendalikan dia secara special handling supaya ianya sampai dengan selamat dan diuruskan dengan cara yang paling baik untuk ke Malaysia nanti.
Dan bila kita cakap mengenai musim haji ni, kita tahulah padatnya macam mana, jemaah berapa ramai orangnya. Jadi macam mana kita nak pastikan apa yang kita hantar itu sampai tepat pada lokasinya dan juga pada waktunya?
Baik. Di Tanah Suci sekarang kita sudah ada 30 petugas yang akan memberi perkhidmatan yang terbaik kepada jemaah haji kita. Dan selain itu juga kita punya rakan logistik di sana yang untuk memastikan bahawa tiap-tiap barangan yang dikirimkan akan sampai ke Malaysia dalam tempoh 7 ke 14 hari. Dan mengikut rekod-rekod kita yang lepas-lepas, 100% barangan yang dikirim ni telah pun berjaya kita serahkan. Dan selain daripada itu, kepada jemaah-jemaah haji juga jangan bimbang. Kita juga di sana ada menyediakan perkhidmatan yang kita panggil cash on delivery. Maknanya bila kirim barang, untuk dihantar ke Malaysia, tak perlu tunai sebab nanti apabila kita buat COD, kita akan delivery dari sini, kita akan pungut di sini. Dan apabila ini kita buat dan mata wang yang kita akan gunakan nanti adalah ringgit Malaysia. Jadi itu satu lagi option kepada jemaah haji apabila mengirim barang melalui Perkhidmatan Malaysia bagasi haji nanti.
Dan mungkin buat yang belum familiar dengan perkhidmatan ini, mungkin ada juga list barangan-barangan yang dilarang. Jadi apakah barang-barang tersebut, Cik Zaini? Boleh kongsikan?
Baik, ini adalah satu tips penting untuk jemaah haji sebab bila sampai di sana nanti terlalu banyak barang yang hendak dibeli sebab nak bagi cenderamata kepada rakan dan juga ahli keluarga. Saya bagi beberapa contoh seperti yang popular di sana, ya, minyak wangi, mungkin madu Yaman ataupun air zam-zam. Perlu diingatkan bahawa barang-barangan cecair tidak boleh dihantar melalui bungkusan kerana tiap-tiap bungkusan ini mempunyai peraturan ataupun satu syarat yang kita panggil barang-barang larangan ataupun barang-barang berbahaya. Jadi senjata juga tak boleh kerana dia dah jadi barang berbahaya. Ada juga jemaah haji yang mungkin terbawa barang kemas lebih dan tak dihantar ke Malaysia, ya, bagi tujuan keselamatan. Itu juga tidak boleh. Jadi paling penting sekali ialah apabila ingin mengepus barang atau ingin membeli barang di sana, terlebih dahulu boleh rujuk dengan petugas-tugas kita di kaunter-kaunter Pos Malaysia di sana untuk mendapatkan dengan lebih detail apakah barang-barang yang boleh dan tak boleh dihantar melalui bagasi haji bagi memastikan barang selamat sampai ke Malaysia mengikut masa yang telah kita tetapkan.
Jadi untuk dapatkan perincian lanjut tu selain kru dilikuasi, bagaimana mungkin dari online ke, bagaimana mereka boleh dapatkan details yang orang kata detail lah untuk jemaah Malaysia?
Jangan susah-susah, jangan stres dan sebagainya. Boleh melawat laman web kita www.pos.com.my atau boleh menghubungi talian khidmat pelanggan kita 1-300-300-300. Kita ada ejen khidmat pelanggan yang mesra untuk melayan ahli keluarga jemaah haji yang mungkin nak bertanya apakah barang yang boleh dihantar dan tak boleh dihantar menggunakan perkhidmatan bagasi haji ini.
Terima kasih banyak Encik Zaini, dan itulah sedikit sebanyak kriteria dan juga standard piawaian untuk mendapatkan perkhidmatan bagasi haji untuk jemaah Malaysia yang berniat untuk menunaikan haji ke Madinah dan juga Mekah. Dan rangkaian perhantaran ini menyantuni lebih dari 11 juta alamat, menawarkan ketenangan fikiran kepada semua jemaah haji Malaysia yang bawa barang-barang mereka, tak kisahlah cenderahati maupun naskah Al-Quran, selamat dihantar ke mana sahaja anda berada. Baik, saya kira itu sahaja yang saya dapat kongsikan. Kembali ke rakan setugas di studio.
Anjali, awak bukan sedih je macam jeruk. Bisnes dah lama, pelanggan kurang, nak buat apa, nak suruh datang. Mungkin TV buat kasih pasang, baru datang.
Jangan, Anjali, jangan, nanti kena denda, kamu di penjara.
Oh, habis macam mana, nak buat apa? Astro kan ada, pelanggan berganda, nak tengok bola atau nak tengok opa. Anjali kena cuba, berkisah bola, semua ada. Astro kan ada, pelanggan berganda, bisnes maju punya, ganda-ganda.
Right, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us for this session, Innovating for Social Impact. It's great to see all of you here and also those of you joining us online. Thank you for being here. My name is Mina Al-Arabi. I am the Editor-in-Chief of The National based in Abu Dhabi, and I am also a member of the Young Global Leaders community. I'm delighted to be moderating this session. The world is going through major changes, but also some upheaval, of course. Here in this region, much of this morning has been actually about terrible war ongoing in Gaza and trying to find solutions for the conflicts that we witness here. But also there's the excitement of the green energy transition, there is the technological revolution that we are seeing, economic changes. So it's a mixed bag, really. And this is an opportunity for us to really have a conversation about what this means on the ground, societal changes, but also innovation and how we can hopefully do a better job as humans with this world that we have. So this idea of societal transitions is also linked to change makers. Who are the change makers? And here really we are joined by 3 change makers who think about these issues and also ensuring that it is inclusive, that what we do is inclusive. And the world, again, had the opportunity to do better with the Sustainable Development Goals, whose deadline isn't by 2030. Unfortunately, all indicators are we will not meet any of the 17 SDG goals as a world. However, different countries have done progress on different goals. And this idea of, well, what do we do to make sure that we do not miss these goals like we did with the Millennium Goals, for those who remember that era. So we are online. The hashtag is Special Meeting 24 for those who would like to comment online. And we will be coming to those of you here with us in the session for questions later on. So please be prepared to pose your questions. I'm delighted that with me, and I'll start from the furthest to my left, Lynn Malkawi, who's founder and director of WASL for Awareness and Education in Jordan, and she is also a member of the Global Shaper community. We also have Anne-Laure Malazad, thank you, who is a member of the Young Global Leader community. She is a partner head of Europe, Middle East, and Africa Social Impact Practice at Bain & Company. And we have right to my immediate left, May Al-Muzaini, who is a founder and chief executive officer of the Arab Institute for Women's Empowerment, NUSF, here in Saudi Arabia. So thank you. I want to ask each of you the same question as we kick off, really. And that is, what do you see as the most important, and I know it's always a confluence of things, but the most important driver for positive social change in the region, and how can we support it? So May, I want to start with you.
Thanks, Mina. It's great to be here. I would say for the MENA region, one aspect that happened globally, of course, but affected the MENA region in a positive way, some sort, I would say COVID. The pandemic has created a financial setback, of course, but it also created a reflection on so many people. What do they want to do after COVID? How are they going to expand? A lot of people left jobs, there's economic setbacks, there's all of that, but also it created a social innovation kind of space for people who wanted to be different after COVID. That's for the MENA region. And for Saudi Arabia, I would say the best social change that has happened in our country would be Vision 2030. It's a complete, epic reform plan for the Saudis, for the economy, for individuals that created that space for us to improve our lives. And in particular, of course, women and the youth. And so innovation has spurred so much. And I remember the Crown Prince mentioning that Saudi Arabia cannot thrive by itself if its neighboring countries are not thriving. So we think that this is a roadmap for our country, but can be emulated in the countries near us or in the Arab world.
Great. And just to pick up on the point of Vision 2030 and what you said, this idea that it was a direction that was given and then people can innovate and fit into this wider vision.
Absolutely, absolutely. And not only that, you know, it's about, it focuses on a thriving economy, an ambitious nation, and a vibrant society. And with all of these 3 pillars come sub-pillars to include that. Well, a lot of it includes women empowerment, it includes youth engagement, it includes innovation, it includes diversifying from the economy. So there's a lot of, tells you how, what to do. And people have been following it effortlessly, seamlessly. So it's been going really well.
So, Anne-Laure, I want to turn to you. The same question, the most important driver for positive social change that you're seeing in the region, and how we can continue to support it.
Thank you, Mina. And I really look forward to the discussion because I see many people in the audience that are probably even bigger experts than I am at this topic. So looking forward to that. I totally agree with what May said. For me, though, I think looking at it from the other side, is we have something in the Middle East that other regions don't have. We have the highest number of youth, highest percentage of youth in the world. We often have a narrative around the region and no, we don't have enough of something. This is something we have plenty of. And so for me, the hope is around, you know, the enthusiasm of youth and how to harness that for change, because they have been a massive driver of change the last few years. The beauty of our youth as well is most of the data suggests that they're optimistic and positive about the future. There's a recent analysis that was done by Vice that showed that Arab Gen Zers, over half of them, are optimistic about their country. And this was 20%, I think, above the global average. So it shows you the distinction there. And additional studies show that they're not scared of the changes taking place around AI, around some of these different shifts, which in many other countries, perhaps, there's more questions on. So I think the biggest questions for all of us to continue having youth drive social change will be, how do we make sure we maintain that hope to ensure that they don't lose hope? Because I think in the current context, it's easy sometimes to get discouraged, you know, and there's many reasons for that. But also, how do we create an ecosystem that can continue to help them and sustain them on their change journey? Because enthusiasm is one thing, but you need other drivers to help them actually make that change a reality.
Thank you, Anne-Laure. And just to your point about that optimism, that's across all countries, it's found? Does it, I mean, there must be varieties.
There are varieties, and I think there are countries where the youth generally would like to move and potentially sees, you know, higher potential. But on average, they're more optimistic than other regions of the world.
That's great. Okay, so Dean, over to you. So same question, what is the most important driver for positive social change that you see at the moment? What can we do to support it?
All right, thank you, Mina. It's a pleasure being here with all of you today. By far, education. Education is, at an early stage, the biggest driver, in my opinion. Just to give context on social innovation and social impact, it leads to 7% of the global GDP. It's created 10 million enterprises globally, 2 trillion in annual revenue, and 200 million jobs. So if we are talking about this, if we are wanting to tackle one of the biggest problems that youth face today, which is unemployment, we need to start educating them. We need to start teaching them how to create businesses, how to create social impact initiatives at an early age.
Great, thank you. And so when you give those statistics for education, that's something that seems sensible, that, you know, who could go against education, so to speak. What have you found is, and you can talk to Jordan's example, what do you find are the enablers for that? Is this about the education system? What's the ecosystem that's required to ensure that education stays that focal point?
I think that social innovation, social enterprises, it's a new concept. So this needs to be a partnership between the public sector and the private sector with the experience that have launched this. Also, when we're talking about investing in human capital education, it's about collaboration by people with diverse perspectives to address problems that go beyond borders. So I believe that the education system needs to definitely include methodologies that teach youth this at an early age.
Thank you. Okay, Lena, I want to stay with you because I do want to talk about the fact that there is this terrible ongoing war and occupation in Palestine. We just heard from the U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, on stage moments ago, calling this the worst crisis in the Middle East since 1948. And I think for many people in the region, kind of feels, even if we weren't around in 1948, from from everything that we've heard and we've learned, that this is such a seminal and terrible moment for many people. So when we talk about innovating for good, when we talk about social impact, how do we enable people at a time like this, and what can be done? Also, when we talk about young people, we talk about people in Palestine, what can be done?
Absolutely. So first of all, the situation that's happening in Gaza, it's not limited to a certain region or to a certain type of people. This is the biggest humanitarian crisis that my generation has seen. We're talking about 35,000 people that have been killed. We're talking about 14,500 women and children. So this is a very, very big percentage. We're talking about 77,000 people injured, 8,000 people missing. The disregard of human life has left beating hearts in the region hopeless. We're sitting here enjoying our 3-course meals while education, which we were just talking about, is under attack. We have 90% of school buildings have been destroyed and no university left standing. So we're talking about social impact, we're talking about innovation, but the pillars, the infrastructure for this in that part have been completely destroyed. We're talking about hospitals. 20 out of 22 hospitals have been destroyed. So in addition to that, economically for the region, there's a huge effect. Investors have pulled out because this is considered a political risk. We're talking about insurance companies have raised prices on shipping. We're talking about tourism has affected the entire region, especially Jordan. Ryanair just canceled all flights to and from Jordan. So one of the things that we need to take action on immediately now is promote an immediate ceasefire and then work collectively as nations across the world to build back better and focus on how we can mitigate the mental health risks that the next generation of youth have been accustomed to.
It's been incredible to see some of the stories coming out from Gaza where actually amidst all this despair, people also innovating and coming up with solutions where people have been pulling in together. There was this incredible story of a 15-year-old boy who was able to take solar panels from buildings that were destroyed and actually use them to charge phones, you know, something that we think is now essential, an essential human right for us to maintain connectivity. And so this idea is, as we think about social innovation, social impact, everything you said, Lean, is so important, but also, you know, we look to people like you, all three of you, to think, okay, well, you know, despite the despair, we're journalists and we deal with all the cynical and terrible headlines, but we also have to think how we can make positive change, how we can make that impact. So I want to ask you about that. As difficult as it is to look to, you know, making a better future, what does it take? What should people be thinking about, working towards?
Well, I mean, it should be looking towards initiatives like the Shapers have done. So there's Connect Palestine, Shaper Aid. What the region now needs is to be able to build back better. And it's initiatives like Connect Palestine where we're supporting our fellow Shapers in Palestine. Initiatives like Shaper Aid where we are allowing people to donate and to help build back better. So it starts with this, but then it starts with a collective responsibility of every single person. To see how they can contribute, to see how they can support entrepreneurship, how we can support building back better. And Palestinian entrepreneurs, as you have said, have been the most creative globally. And so that is something we're very proud of. And we hope that this situation ends soon.
Inshallah. Okay, so on Wasal, and then we'll move to you, Anne-Laure, for the next question on kind of how we create that ecosystem, successful ecosystem for social innovation. Before that, I want to ask you about Wasal, because that's something you've been working on, and part of this is that enablement of young people, vulnerable communities. Tell us more about how, through that work, you've learned more about social impact and innovation.
Absolutely. So Wasal is my baby, my biggest passion project that I've started 6 years ago, and it brings me the biggest light of my life to be able to work with youth in the region. So in Wasal, we walk the walk, and we not just talk the talk. So we start with entrepreneurship education, empowering young people at an early age. So we start our flagship program, Shabbi Kubadir. We work on partnering private and public schools together for a joint learning experience where they learn how to create businesses, they learn community organizing, they learn project management, and then we help fund their businesses or their small projects so that they can learn entrepreneurship at a young age. That is one of our flagship projects, working with the younger youth. We're talking about 15 to 18 years of age. Then we work with university graduates and people between the ages of 21 and 28 to help through a mini accelerator program, teach them how to launch proper businesses, how to do feasibility studies, how to market their project, how to access funding, and then we help them access funding. Thankfully, we were able to help 93 youth access funding from financial institutions, incubations, and accelerations. So we work collectively on empowering youth through different age ranges, and one of my biggest joys is working with especially the younger youth in high school, teaching them this at an early age.
And Laura, I want to ask you about that, because this idea of teaching, equipping with skills and so forth has to come in to a wider ecosystem that allows for their success. So how do you build that ecosystem, be it in an organization or be it in the wider society, that allows for social innovation?
I think there's multiple levels of ecosystem that you need to have. And I think, I mentor and judge in a number of social incubators, but also incubators in the region. The number one challenge I find is mindset and awareness, and it's in two ways. The first thing is we are so scared of failure. I mean, it's beyond. The number of people that come, about 60% of the entrepreneurs I mentor have another job on the side. They do this as a, 5 to 9 p.m. type of gig. It's hard to innovate when you have, responsibilities and another job at the same time. So I think that's one thing. And what will my dad say, or me? There's always this fear, right? Awareness also that social innovation doesn't mean doing nonprofit, right? This is massive. Most of the people that I mentor start with a business idea and then we take them towards the social. How can you make this more social? Can you hire underprivileged people to be part of this? Do you want to have a focus on community building as part of your launch, for example? There's many ways to be social. People tend to have a very traditional, outdated view of, I do nonprofit, I give charity. We really have to change that mindset around that. I think if we do that, that's step number one of building and broadening the impact of what we do. Education is massive. I think also just access to the right partnerships, universities, incubators as well, which tend to be pockets in our region. How do we, scale that up? Partnerships have been a big way of doing that. And I have to say, even in Palestine, what I've seen that's really inspired me is almost all of us that are in social impact have found a way to contribute through partnerships. Entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs helping social entrepreneurs, there's really possibility for partnership, even at an individual level, for collective action. So I would say some of the things we need to work on is definitely, awareness raising around what social innovation is and changing those mindsets. And that comes through education as well. In school, we don't teach people that entrepreneurship is a cool thing. We teach them that, engineering, math, and there's a few sectors you need to work on, and we don't talk about entrepreneurship enough. So changing that from an early age, focusing on education in a way that promotes risk-taking as well, and then helping to provide access to funding, access to the right partnerships, I think are the way to broaden the impact of what we're doing today.
And, when I asked you the opening question, you said youth is what you see as being the biggest driver of change, the mindset of youth being quite positive. Now you're talking about education. So if we were to pull them all together, is this something that you see as government-led? What role for the private sector to kind of, again, create this enablement? Because a lot of it, especially in our region, you would think that's really going to have to be government-led. And we see the impact when you do have government-led, be it in Saudi Arabia, be it in the UAE and other countries, where we actually see, yes, it's really led by the top.
And I think governments have switched to focus on that. I mean, the last 5 years I've seen across most of the region, in the GCC, outside the GCC, there's changes in the curricula around, teaching entrepreneurship. It's hard to teach entrepreneurship, but teaching the basics of what you need to be able to get inspired around that through, for example, practical projects, which kids are asked to do in high school, which wasn't the case previously, but also by having young people who are 14, 15 years old actually go to workplaces, go see startups, interact with them. That has become a policy and it's broadening. So I think that's definitely a big part of the change. But the other side is also just youth having space to do that innovation. So we've started to see platforms come up through different foundations in the region, for example, where youth are encouraged to produce projects, doing hackathons, etc. That has also helped, I think. So I don't think it's only government-led. I think government builds the foundation, but it needs to be enriched by collective action from different members of the third sector, for example, and the community.
Yeah. Who we have represented brilliantly on this panel.
Exactly.
So May, I want to turn to you. When we talk about, again, innovation, social impact, you've spoken about Vision 2030 and the changes that we've seen in Saudi Arabia. The speed of change and the breadth and depth of it is incredible to witness. So how do you maintain that momentum? And how do you make sure that it's also inclusive? Tell us about your work, but also how we can ensure that that is inclusive.
I have to say, with the speed of change, that I have to check the papers every day to see what's changing in my country or what's happening. But my observation is that our country right now with Vision 2030 is acting as a role model for the rest of the country. So there's the government, normally change happens like a pyramid. From the bottom, people demand change, and then the change reaches up to the top, and the change happens. For us here, I think it's an inverted pyramid where the government anticipates what they expect from the people, and they create the foundations for them, and we just follow. So, for instance, the government created a platform called Ihsan. Ihsan is a platform, or goodwill in English, and creates, allows the community to participate, allows corporations to participate, to help in donations, to provide access to people that is secure and transparent and nothing shady. So since it started a few years back, it managed to generate 7 billion riyals that went to the poor, that went to the imprisoned person's family, that went to so many things that helped the community in itself. But that also spurred some more individuals. On an individual level, the sustainability and the introductions of how do you sustain work, or how do you sustain the environment and climate change. There's a program that was developed by an individual called Tadweem, and this is trying to make fashion sustainable. And so he collects all the used clothing, they sanitize it, they clean it, they prepare it, and then they sell it for, of course, a cheaper price. But that helps also in sustaining the environment and protecting it. And for us, NUSF, the Arab Institute for Women's Empowerment, what we do is we believe that women, it's very challenging for women to advance by themselves without the support of the community. And so we work as individuals to make sure that our society, our community, who really are men and women, support me as a woman. So for instance, it's important for me that my father supported me as I went into college. My husband supported me as I found a job. My brother was always a shoulder to cry on. And even the farther you go away from the cities, the son has influence over his mother. So this is a role that we all have to address as a society. Not only that, then you have the mother, the grandmother, the auntie, they all have an influential role on women. So what we do, we wanted to make sure that the whole society contributes to women's advancement. So we have a podcast called Nus Voices, where we talk about social barriers that get in the way of women's advancement. We talk about our taboos, our success stories, our setbacks, whatever it is. And by the way, we don't claim to have any answers. We just put it out there. Once we acknowledge it, the shift will happen by itself. So these are some examples that we feel are creating that shift within the country and globally, because really the largest demographic globally, not only in Saudi Arabia, are millennials, are Gen Zs. And really, these people are tech savvy, they are change makers, and I'm just so excited for the future.
It's really interesting what you said about society and how society can hold back change. And so part of it is raising awareness, and Laura spoke about mindsets and so forth. So you've got the awareness raising, but there's also the role modeling. And how much have you seen that now people see all these changing, the role models that are emerging?
Well, let me tell you this. I worked in Aramco for 30 years, and I never had a mentor. In fact, I didn't even know what mentorship meant. And there was a gentleman who had really impressive business ethics, so I just followed what he was doing. But then I realized, why don't women have mentors? And this is where we created a Walk the Talk program where we identify senior executive women and we match them with 50 young professionals just entering the job market. Because I'm from Al Khubar, on the Corniche, we put hand in hand, we allow them match one-on-one, and they go and walk for an hour or an hour and a half. Because I mentored around 70 women, they all come to my office. It was a very formal setting, and you lose the spontaneity. And with the walking, first of all, there's exercise, there's release, there's fresh air, and then they get to be casual with themselves. And you know what these senior executive women says? We were so busy. Thanks for giving us the opportunity to give back. And the young ladies would say, well, it's very hard to reach somebody at a higher level. So there's always the secretary getting in the way, and so it's impossible. So when you create that space for both to participate, I think everybody wins.
It's great. Okay, so I'm going to give you all an opportunity to ask questions to our speakers. Otherwise, we can keep talking amongst ourselves here. So please indicate if you'd like to ask a question, and I will come to you. We have a shy group here. All right, I'll come back. Oh, yes. Okay, please. Yes, go ahead. Thank you. If you could kindly identify yourself.
I'm Abdul Karim. I work as an HR for developing youth and building new capabilities and capacities for the Libyan market. So the problem that we have in most of the Arab countries nowadays that the oil sector is overstaffed. So have you ever come across some ideas that how to change people from one market to another? Because basically just sending people at home without having something that can be productive of is a little bit of a challenge. So have you ever came across an idea that starting something from scratch, that building people and driving this, because this is a very big challenge when we talk about mass.
Thank you very much. Anne-Laure, do you want to start?
Yes, sure. So I think it's important to note that 20 years ago, our skills lasted 15 to 20 years. Today, it's 2 to 5 years, depending on the sector. So your shelf life of the skills is changing all the time, and reskilling is becoming part of the conversation, even in the same sector, right? Let alone moving to another sector. There's 2 things I've seen that have been really effective in doing what you're talking about, one of which I personally designed in a couple of countries in the social sector. One thing is the development of bridge programs. So taking people who are either unemployed or whose skills don't fit the organizations that they work in anymore, and essentially doing a reskilling program to move them to another sector where there was a need for jobs. That has worked, very well. I think we've seen above 90% adoption in terms of employment within 6 months of the program ending. And these are not long programs. The programs we were looking at were taking people from the medical field to the social workers field, as an example. And we had, it was, I think, a total of 2.5 months or something in terms of length. So that can happen quite quickly as well, depending on the skills and the needs. The second one is looking at better job matchmaking, essentially. And I think there's a lot around AI there and how it's shifting the matching of job profiles. The most basic sense is looking at the skills you need in one sector and the skills you have and doing that mapping, which some governments are doing today actively. But what we're starting to see with AI is it goes beyond the skills. It goes into your mindset, your personality. So there's a lot around, of course, psychometric testing, but beyond that, what are your, behaviors and preferences in terms of work to ensure better matching. That has also been quite successful in the pilots that have been conducted recently in the region. So I think there's definitely ways to upskill and reskill people to different sectors based on the needs.
Great, thank you, sure.
My view is I also think that companies, corporations should monitor what the changes are happening, especially among the youth, and adjust. For example, there are a lot of people that I know that feel like they want to be part of the change in the country. They want to be decision makers as well. They want to be creating an impact, and they don't get that opportunity. There's so many layers. And for us, when we were in Aramco, it was a 7-to-4 job. Right now, you find youth working in a coffee shop at 12 o'clock at midnight and working, and then you come to the office and you see an impact of information that they have provided you. So we really have to reflect on what kind of a work environment do we want to do. The youth, those who are entering the job market in hordes, they want to make an impact. They want to create a legacy. For a lot of us, we worked to put food on the table. For them, they want to create an impact for their country, for themselves, for their families, and so we should allow that.
Lynn.
All right, thank you. So first of all, I'd like to start with a statistic. So 1 in 2 social enterprises is led by women, compared to women CEOs that are leading Fortune 500 companies are only 10%. So this number, when we take a look at it, just 10 years ago, 20 years ago, wouldn't have been something that is possible or that you would have seen now. So one thing, if you want to look at transitioning people from one type of job to another, I think you need to look at 2 things. First thing is creating awareness on the jobs that are currently present, what those development in those jobs looks like, etc., and then incentivizing them to make that career shift. Because if they don't know what is waiting for them, what they can change towards, they will not make that change, and a lot of people don't know. And that's one thing I also do is I have a company called Mihnati Portal. And what we do at Mihnati is we focus on jobs of the future, such as artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, big data, all these different things, and we create awareness on those jobs. What do these jobs actually look like? What are the economic impacts of these jobs? We connect people on the platform with mentors that work in these fields. So a lot of the time, this works on, first of all, allowing youth to understand what jobs are out there, and also allowing career shifters to understand, yes, I'm doing this, there's no, potential in this moving forward, what can I do? Where are these jobs? So it's creating awareness and incentives for them to make those shifts.
Thank you very much. Okay, I don't know if we have... Yes, please, gentleman here.
Mohammed Kafaji, Faisal University in Riyadh. Being a professor in academia, there's a... Oh, stand up. Oh, I didn't know that. Sorry. Yes. There's a trend, a global trend, which accredit universities based on their societal impact. Now, while universities are very good in innovation and entrepreneurship, that's what we're supposed to be doing. Well, I claiming to be doing. But most of the time, we are sort of shy of reaching out to the society, say, what can we do for you? Now, my question to you is to reverse, say, what the community, what the industries and other sectors doing to bridge that gap. Most of the professors, they do their normal job day to day, teach lessons and do some research, publish, and they go home and then holiday, and then we repeat the same thing over and over again. Somehow we need to break that cycle. So bring the education closer with more tangible societal impact. We cannot do it well, I'm sorry to admit this, but academia doesn't always push to do that. Maybe it works if you push us or you come closer to us to bridge the gap and improve our societal impact.
Liam, do you want to?
Yeah. So I think like bridging the gap between the real world and basically, or the job market and education systems, it lies with companies such as mine, like Mihnati Portal, which I was saying. So when youth, this portal, basically it provides 3 main services, like I said, where you promote what these jobs are actually like on the ground. You promote what the development in these different jobs looks like, how much money they can make, where these jobs are provided, and you connect them with mentors. So when you're looking at bridging the gap between academia and basically the job market, you need to make that connection through the private sector, through companies like Mehnatis that can connect people to this.
Maybe just two small additions. I think one is there are examples of universities that embed the need for social innovation within their outcomes, as you said, and we see that, for example, AUC out of Cairo has classes where students and professors who are also practitioners have to do social impact projects in order to succeed in the class or things like that. So I think there's ways also to embed it more effectively within the system. And the last thing I was going to say is we talked a lot about social enterprise, but let's not forget there's so many actors in social innovation, right? The philanthropy space is doing a lot right now within social innovation. We've seen 500,000 new ultra high net worth individuals coming into the region and starting to do philanthropy. How are they doing it? Through different, new means of giving, through partnerships, for example, or donor-assisted funds. There's a lot of new structures around social innovation, and some of them include academia actually as part of it. So I think creating those bridges and connections between the different stakeholders is really critical, because social enterprise is a powerful means, but it is not the only way that we're seeing change happen at the moment in the social space.
Also, I want to add that we have a pillar called research, where we identify where the gaps are for Saudi women in the labor market and beyond, and we make recommendations for companies what they should do to close these gaps. So,
could you make those recommendations to universities?
So maybe we could work with universities as well to have that collaboration where we can add value to the community.
So we're sadly running out of time, so I have a couple of questions, and I want you to please answer briefly so I can get to my second question. So my first question is, give us an example of one social impact innovation you've seen. Doesn't necessarily have to be one that you've carried out, but one that you've seen in the last 5 years that you thought that's a good example of success, that could either be scaled up or you think that's a good example, in addition to the great work you've done. So, May.
Okay, so I've just talked about the Sustainable Climate Change Initiative, Tadweem. That's an impressive one, because we are a large purchasing power in Saudi Arabia, a big market, so people tend to buy. We're consumers. And so that's a shame that we don't find ways to recycle it. And I think this initiative is an outstanding one. We should do more of it.
I think one social innovation that's inspired me, and I've seen work quite well, is creating outcome-based contracts between governments in the social sector and non-profit organizations or third sector. There's a tendency in a region for the government to do a lot. So looking at how government can work with third sector players through clear outcomes and impact measurements to actually empower them to deliver on the change without the government doing everything, I think there's a lot of potential there.
So there's three that have inspired me, but I'm going to capitalize on one specifically. So we're talking about renewable energy, telemedicine, and the circular economy. These are three terminologies that have really inspired me in the last decade. But focusing more on telemedicine, we have a wonderful initiative and a wonderful company in Jordan called At-Tibbi. And it's being run by a Schwab social innovator called Jalil Al-Labadi. And basically what they provide is they provide healthcare or access to healthcare online for people that cannot afford it, and for people in marginalized communities and in vulnerable groups. So this is wonderful. In COVID, it was a big help. It's initiatives like these that allow us to reach markets in diverse communities, to access talent pools that were previously untapped, and to broaden supplier networks.
That's great. That's a very good example. Oh, okay. We have a delayed question, but we will come to you. Please, lady in the front.
Actually, it's another source of example, and also build up on what you were saying.
If you could stand, please, and identify
Yes,
yourself.
for sure.
Thank you.
So my name is Malak. I am the founder of a social enterprise called the Volunteer Circle. We're based out of Lebanon. we really take care of all the processes that turn volunteering from a haphazard process into a tangible, measurable, outcome-based process. And I think that volunteers, when they volunteer with their skills, today we have 7 out of 8 people who prefer to volunteer with their skills, are a huge source of social innovation and breaking the cycle of underemployment. So in terms of unemployment and underemployment, as you said, Anne, we are talking about the shelf life of skills that doesn't last. And when you're on the ground volunteering, you're building the timeless skills that all employers are looking for. And these are backed by reports by the World Economic Forum as well. And in terms of entrepreneurship, how to create our own opportunities, right, as you were saying, Glenn, when you're volunteering, volunteers on the front line have access to the most pressing challenges. And I've seen more than 90 stories out of 2,000 just the past year in the volunteer circle transition from volunteering to impact enterprises with a sustainable business model. And this, for me, is a big thing. I wrote an article about 6 ways volunteering makes you a better entrepreneur on the WEF agenda. And we also work with educators to push for a framework that truly matches all our trends and how to make social impact an outcome-based component in curricula.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think this is an example as well.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. A good example to keep in mind. Okay, so very briefly, what gives you hope when it comes to social innovation looking to the future? May.
I'm already seeing it right now with this youth movement all over the world. I have to say, they're all tech savvy, they're all united. The gender disparity is changed. I mean, they're just supportive. They work anywhere. And so I look forward for them to be our future leaders. In fact, our Crown Prince is a millennial.
I would say seeing models that don't exist anywhere else or that, are completely disruptive emerge here is something that is giving me hope. Seeing that the government is now adjusting because it's seeing youth call for crowdsourcing, crowd giving, volunteering in a different way, seeing the governments in the region adjust their laws for that, that's giving me hope because youth, again, is the driver of change, and we're seeing other stakeholders adapt to that as well.
So what gives me hope is that starting a company is not what it once was before. So now it is easier than ever, especially in countries like Riyadh. Countries like Saudi Arabia and Riyadh here, they are the biggest supporters of entrepreneurship, of youth innovation. There is so much money out there that youth can utilize, so many resources, so many capacity building programs. So now is the time. Now is the time to start your own company. There are so many people out there willing to help you, and the world is changing.
Thank you very much. Okay, so with that, it was interesting that we started our session with May saying that COVID and the pandemic were an incredible kind of motivator and got people thinking in a different way, despite, of course, the many setbacks and the terrible loss of life. So that was an interesting start to our conversation as we then inevitably spoke about the power and the sheer charge and momentum of young people across the region. Of course, here in Saudi Arabia with Vision 2030, we're seeing how that can be utilized and taking that youth and dynamism to go in a very targeted way, but then also in other parts of the region. We spoke at length and importantly on those who need to be included and making sure that we think about social impact also not just as non-profit, and to your point, Lean, that you ended on, that companies now can be set up and you can think about that. And we just had the great example from our participant here, Malak, who thought about, okay, well, actually you see people volunteering and then they think this can become a business idea. Importantly, we spoke about, of course, the devastation that's happening in Gaza, but also thinking about in conflict zones, it's a different conversation. And we still have to find the possibility of good news, but also the possibility of actually changing the dynamic by enabling people. Importantly, reskilling, building bridges, the role of academia, role modeling, hugely important. So as you go about your everyday, think about the social impact you're having, and I hope that you took away some of these pearls of wisdom from our panel. Please thank them, and thank you for being here.